You're not supposed to admit it out loud. That you think about money more than feels comfortable. That you lie awake running numbers that don't quite add up yet. That sometimes, in the middle of an otherwise ordinary day, a thought arrives uninvited. What would it feel like to never have to worry about this again? And stays longer than you'd like. You've been told that makes you materialistic. Shallow. That the obsession with money is a modern disease, a symptom of a culture that confused net worth with self-worth. But what if the story is older than that? What if the part of your brain that fixates on financial security isn't a character flaw or a cultural contamination? What if it's doing exactly what it was built to do and has been doing it since long before money existed? That's what I want to talk about today. Here's what most conversations about wealth obsession get wrong. They start in the wrong place. They begin with capitalism, with Instagram, with the highlight reel of someone else's life making yours feel insufficient. And those things are real. They do amplify the fixation, but they didn't create it. The drive to acquire, to secure, to accumulate resources beyond what you need right now, that existed long before social media, long before currency, long before any economic system that could be blamed for it. It is, at its core, a biological instruction, and your brain is following it whether you are aware of it or not. To understand where it actually comes from, you have to go back a very long way. For most of human evolutionary history, resources were scarce and unpredictable. Food, shelter, social standing. These things didn't arrive on a reliable schedule. They had to be found, competed for, protected. And the individuals who survived long enough to pass on their genes were not, on average, the ones who felt satisfied with enough. They were the ones who kept acquiring, who stored more than they needed, who felt a low-level, persistent anxiety about whether what they had would last. That anxiety wasn't a malfunction. It was a feature, a survival signal so effective that natural selection kept it, refined it, and passed it forward across hundreds of thousands of generations. You are the descendant of the people who were never quite satisfied, who always looked at their resources and thought, this might not be enough. And your brain, running largely the same hardware as theirs, is still receiving that signal today. The problem is that the environment changed. The signal didn't. Neuroscientists have a name for the system doing most of this work. It's called the mesolimbic dopamine pathway, and it is one of the oldest and most powerful circuits in the human brain. And here's what matters about it. It is not, despite what most people assume, a pleasure system. It is an anticipation system. Dopamine doesn't flood your brain when you get what you want. It floods your brain when you are about to get what you want, when the reward is possible, approaching, within reach. And the moment the reward arrives, the raise, the bonus, the purchase you saved for, the dopamine drops. The satisfaction you expected doesn't quite materialize. And almost immediately, the system recalibrates and starts scanning for the next target. This is why getting more money rarely feels like enough. Not because you are greedy or broken or insufficiently grateful, but because your reward circuitry was never designed to produce lasting satisfaction. It was designed to keep you moving, keep you acquiring, keep you just dissatisfied enough to try again. The finish line was always going to move. That's not a personal failure. That's a biological design. But here's where it becomes more than evolutionary biology. Here's where it gets specific to you. Because not everyone experiences the pull toward financial security with the same intensity. For some people, it's background noise, present but manageable. For others, it's a persistent, almost physical preoccupation that infiltrates decisions, relationships, sleep. And the research on financial anxiety suggests that the difference often has less to do with how much money someone actually has, and more to do with something that was shaped much earlier than their bank balance. Studies in developmental psychology have found that people who grew up in households where money was unpredictable, where there was enough this month and not enough the next, where adult anxiety about finances was something children absorbed without being directly told anything, can develop a heightened sensitivity to financial threat that persists into adulthood long after the material circumstances have changed. The nervous system learned in those early years that financial instability meant emotional instability, that when the money was uncertain, everything was uncertain. That security, real security, the felt sense of being okay, was something that arrived with a number and left with one too. And so in adulthood, that nervous system keeps watching the number. Not because the present is dangerous, but because it learned danger early. And nervous systems, as we now know, don't automatically update their threat assessments just because the environment improved. The obsession with getting rich for many people isn't really about wealth. It's about trying to finally feel safe. There's something else running underneath this that doesn't get named often enough, and that's status. Human beings are not just motivated by the need for physical resources. They are motivated, at a very deep level, by the need for social position. For most of human evolutionary history, status within a group determined access to resources, to mates, to protection, to survival itself, and the brain developed exquisitely sensitive systems for tracking it. In modern societies, money became one of the most legible proxies for status that has ever existed. It's visible, it's quantifiable, it translates across contexts, and because the brain is still running its ancient status monitoring software, it can treat the accumulation of wealth as directly equivalent to the accumulation of social safety. This is why the obsession with getting rich often feels like more than wanting things. It feels like wanting to matter, like wanting to be someone who can't be dismissed, like wanting to sit somewhere in the room where nobody questions whether you belong there. That's not vanity. That's an ancient social survival system doing the only job it knows how to do in the vocabulary available to it. So what do you actually do with a drive this deep, this old, this wired into the architecture of the brain? The first thing worth doing is separating the signal from the story. The signal, the persistent low hum of financial anxiety, the dopamine pull toward more, is neurological. It is not a message about your actual circumstances. It is not an accurate forecast of future danger. It is a very old program running in a context it wasn't written for. Recognizing that doesn't silence it, but it changes your relationship to it. You are not your financial anxiety. You are a person experiencing a biological inheritance that was never designed for the world you're actually living in. The second is understanding the difference between what the research calls extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Studies consistently show that people who pursue wealth, primarily as an end in itself, as the goal rather than the means, tend to report lower well-being even as their net worth increases. While people who pursue financial security in service of something that already has meaning to them, stability for their family, freedom to do work they care about, the capacity to contribute something, tend to find that the drive toward money becomes less compulsive, less like a hunger that can never be satisfied, and more like a tool being used for something worth building. The obsession doesn't have to be dismantled. It can be redirected. And the third, perhaps the hardest, is learning to distinguish between the feeling of financial safety and the fact of it. Because for many people, no number actually produces the feeling. The goalposts move because the nervous system, not the spreadsheet, is deciding when enough is enough, and the nervous system, left unexamined, will never quite arrive. Real security, the felt kind, the kind that doesn't dissolve the moment the market shifts or an unexpected bill arrives, tends to come not from the number getting bigger, but from the relationship with the number changing, from recognizing that what you're really looking for was never in the account to begin with. Your brain is obsessed with getting rich because it is doing exactly what it was built to do. Running a survival program that kept your ancestors alive in a world of genuine scarcity. Chasing a dopamine signal that was never designed to be satisfied. Monitoring status in a social species where position once meant everything. None of that makes you shallow. None of that makes you broken. It makes you human. Specifically, it makes you a human walking around with a Stone Age brain in a world it was never designed to navigate. The drive isn't going away. But now you know what it actually is. And that changes everything about how much power you have to decide what you do with it. I post every week. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And if this helped, a like goes a long way. Now tell me in the comments, is your relationship with money driven more by wanting freedom, wanting status, or just wanting to feel safe? Tell me below. You might be surprised how many people are running the exact same program,